I actually showed some of the 3D stuff I got to Ian Bell, and we talked about it. Because I was worried, actually, at that time. Bizarrely, games felt very... I was, and I think we both were, quite tired of games at the time. In other words, I mean, it sounds silly because you think that's right at the beginning, but games had reached a bit of a... I found them a bit boring, I suppose, that every game seemed to get a life at 10,000, seemed to involve you shooting various shaped blobs in some way, often with some slight twist, like Galaxian, they move a bit and they swoop, but basically they were very, very similar. And I think we both hated that. And, why should you get a spaceship at 10,000, an extra life? I might want extra bullets. I want to choose. And so I think the idea of being able to spend score, which is how we first thought of it, and think, well, wait a second, why don't we just call it money and have done with it? And so there were a lot of ideas that came together almost as an antidote to our boredom with a lot of the games that were out there. Writing a game yourself gives you the opportunity to fix the things you don't like. So we were writing for ourselves, unashamedly. And I think the other problem is that you end up going down a very, very similar line. Because I played around with spaceships where you have, you have a small one, you shoot it, you shoot another small one, then a big one comes along and it's harder to shoot. And then you think, well, where do we go from here? An even bigger one that's even harder to shoot. And it's that it just has a certain pointlessness to it somehow. There's no feeling of progression, no reward. And so in a relatively short period of time, Elite evolved into something that was very, very different to what was out there. The idea of saving your position, the idea of trading, which at first seemed a bit of an anathema. Well, that sounds a bit dull. We said, no, it makes you care. Ironically, the title The Elite, which was what the original title was, came along, I think we're now talking late 1982. So we hadn't been at university all that long when we were talking about it. And it seemed like a very arrogant title, but the idea that you were a sort of supreme pilot in amongst, why are you able to kill everyone, they're not able to kill you? So it's that sort of logic. So we thought, maybe there's a secret society of pilots or group. And so that's where the name came from, and it sort of stuck. I had written software on my Atom after I'd had the disappointment of not being able to write software commercially, that essentially meant I could run, I suppose you might call it today an emulator, that I could run BBC software on my Atom by just changing the way the calls worked, and also by writing my own, what I call, screen driver primitives. And so was able to write code that would transfer directly to a BBC Micro. And Ian already had one. So we put together the first stages of a game and showed it to both, initially, bizarrely, to Thorn EMI, because I still had contacts there. And I thought, how were you interested in publishing the game that 3D that you were interested in has now become? And so we showed it to them, and they were very excited. In fact, the programmers and the developers there were extremely excited about seeing it. But the people we unkindly later referred to as the suits talked about it and said, oh yes, it's a very interesting technical demo, and it shows that you're very competent, but why would anyone want to play a game like that? And it's going to take, how long is it going to take to finish it? We said, quite a long time. And they said, what? Half an hour? I said, no, weeks. And you won't really finish it, which they didn't like either. He said, no, you just get better. You'll be able to do more things. You'll be able to go further and explore. And, ultimately you'll get bored of it. They said, but that's not very good. You can't do that. We want, and what happens if you die? So you die. And they didn't like that either. They said, why can't you have 3 lives? I said, well, it really doesn't fit in with the logic of the game, but we're allowing you to save your place. So that's the equivalent of lives, essentially. I said, look, it's like a bookmark. You save your place, and you can go back to that saved place if you go wrong. Which is, so how many times can you do that? I said, well, as many times as you like. But you don't get a free life when you get 10,000. I said, well, we haven't got a score. And he said, you'd need a score. I said, well, that's what our money is, because you're earning money. Whatever you do earns money. If you shoot a pirate, you get a bounty, which is money. if you sell trades goods from here, they said, oh, that's all very complicated. No one will want to do that. And actually, to be fair, I think we were a bit worried, thinking, are we in this sort of ivory tower? Are people going to want to work out, how much money they need to buy 16 tons of food or whatever? And so we were a bit despondent and downhearted, and then went to Acorn and showed Acorn the game, or Acorn Soft, which is a software division of them that sell all their software, in fact. And the reaction couldn't have been more different. I think the best way to describe it is there weren't any suits at Acorn, in the sense that even the people in senior positions were basically developers. They thoroughly understood, they played games, they wrote software, they understood the people, and they were the sort of people who would buy the games anyway. So they went sort of overboard, thinking, how can you do that? How do you do this? We showed them a screen running in colour in their high resolution, and they were very surprised at that. I said, oh, we've just rewritten the video drivers to do colour. And it actually did something called an interrupt, for those who are technical, halfway down the screen, where it changed screen mode. And I'm sure many people who've tried hacking Elite will have found that and gone, oh, that's a bit complicated, a bit of a mess. So, but anyway, the response from Acorn was really, really positive. They were very excited about it, and sort of went on from there, and they paid us an advance, with which I bought a BBC Micro. The game was pretty well finished at that point, in the sense that you could do everything in the final game pretty well. And so we ended up, the rest of the time, polishing it, improving it. We added a lot of ships. We did a disc version that didn't exist, so that what we had there was much closer to what eventually became the cassette version. I think we made it go a bit faster. We added the missions weren't in. I think one of the things that really made a difference is we honed it from being something that was pretty good to something that was much slicker, if you know what I mean. We made sure it was absolutely solid as a rock, nothing went wrong. So it got a lot of testing as well. We were worried that the bright lights of things like Pac-Man, people would still want to play, and with this would be seen as an interesting esoteric sort of sideline.